What if one of the greatest wars in history never actually happened? A war fought for love. A city burned to ashes. A giant wooden horse that changed history forever. The Trojan War is one of the most famous conflicts ever told. It gave us heroes like Achilles, Hector, and Odysseus. It inspired movies, books, and legends for over 3,000 years. But here's the big question. Was the Trojan War real, or just a myth created by ancient storytellers? Today, we're diving deep into the mystery behind the Trojan War, separating legend from historical evidence. According to Greek mythology, the war began because of a golden apple. At a wedding feast of the gods, Eris, the goddess of discord, threw a golden apple into the crowd. Written on it were the words, "To the fairest." 3 goddesses claimed it: Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite. To settle the dispute, they chose a mortal prince named Paris of Troy to decide who was the most beautiful. Each goddess tried to bribe him. Hera offered power. Athena offered wisdom and victory in battle. But Aphrodite offered something irresistible: the most beautiful woman in the world. Her name was Helen. Paris chose Aphrodite. But there was one problem. Helen was already married to King Menelaus of Sparta. Paris traveled to Sparta, fell in love with Helen, or possibly kidnapped her, and took her back to Troy. In response, Menelaus and his brother Agamemnon gathered a massive Greek army to sail across the sea and bring her back. And so began a war that would last 10 years. The Trojan War is filled with legendary warriors. Achilles, the greatest Greek fighter, nearly invincible except for one weakness: his heel. Hector, Troy's noble defender and greatest hero. Odysseus, the mastermind strategist behind many Greek victories. One of the most dramatic moments comes when Achilles refuses to fight after being insulted by Agamemnon. Without him, the Greeks begin losing badly. Hector pushes the Greeks back to their ships. But when Hector kills Achilles' close friend Patroclus, everything changes. Blinded by rage, Achilles returns to battle and defeats Hector in one of the most famous duels in history. Yet despite years of fighting, neither side could win, until the Greeks came up with a final, desperate plan: the Trojan horse. The Greeks pretended to sail away, leaving behind a massive wooden horse as a gift. The Trojans brought it inside their city walls, unaware that Greek soldiers were hidden inside. At night, the soldiers emerged, opened the gates, and Troy was destroyed. At least, that's the story. But did it really happen? For centuries, people believed the Trojan War was pure myth, a story told by the ancient poet Homer in the Iliad around 700 BC. There were no confirmed ruins of Troy, no proof of Achilles, no proof of Helen, no proof of the war. Then, in the 1870s, a German archaeologist named Heinrich Schliemann made a bold decision. He believed Troy was real. Using clues from Homer's writings, he excavated a site in modern-day Turkey called Hisarlik. And he found something extraordinary. Ruins of an ancient city, actually multiple cities, built on top of each other over centuries. One layer, known as Troy 7, showed signs of destruction by fire and warfare around 1200 BC, the same time historians believe the Trojan War might have occurred. Weapons were found, walls were damaged, evidence of a violent siege. This changed everything. Many historians now believe that while the mythological elements, gods, golden apples, invincible warriors, are fictional, the war itself may have been inspired by a real conflict, possibly a trade war between the Mycenaean Greeks and the city of Troy, which controlled key trade routes between the Aegean Sea and the Black Sea. In other words, the war may not have been about love, but about power and economics. So, was the Trojan War myth or real conflict? The answer is probably both. There was likely a real war. But the story we know today is wrapped in mythology, heroism, and imagination. The Trojan War sits at the crossroads of history and legend. And maybe that's why it still fascinates us thousands of years later. Because it reminds us that history isn't just about facts. It's about the stories we choose to remember. So, was the Trojan War myth or real conflict? The answer is probably both. There was likely a real war. But the story we know today is wrapped in mythology, heroism, and imagination. The Trojan War sits at the crossroads of history and legend. And maybe that's why it still fascinates us thousands of years later. Because it reminds us that history isn't just about facts. It's about the stories we choose to remember. If you enjoyed this deep dive into ancient war history, subscribe for more stories where we uncover the truth behind legendary battles. Next, we might explore, was Achilles a real warrior? Or how accurate is the movie Troy? Let me know in the comments. History is full of mysteries, and we're just getting started.